Pittsburgh Steelers. I project them to 8 wins. How dare me? How dare you project them to have a losing season? Because apparently that is literally impossible under Coach Mike Tomlin. They get 9 wins this year, projected for 10.5 wins. I am a big fan of what they're doing in the secondary. Patrick Peterson is not washed yet. He actually had a pretty solid season in Minnesota. I really like Joey Porter Jr. Levi Wallace is solid. And then Minka Fitzpatrick, one of the best safeties in the league, if not the best safety in the league. This no surprise, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers have a good defense. Like who would have guessed? Like this also could have been the edge rushers with T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. The only problem I have with this team, really, also with the interior guys, right? Cameron Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi. This defense is insane. The only place where it's a problem right now is at linebacker, where they really don't have a standout guy.
Yep.
It's Cole Holcomb, it's Landon Roberts, and then I think Miles Kilber is like their third guy, which is not great. So hopefully one of these guys comes along and can really step in and be a solid linebacker for them. But we're talking about a great secondary, a great edge group, a great D tackle group. Your linebackers could be a little and get away with it. The real question about Pittsburgh is going to be on the offense, right? None of the units themselves really worries me. It's just as a group, there's nothing there that makes me go, oh, yes, this is like legit.
Right. Yeah, listen, I think, and at the end of the day, this is the low-hanging fruit here, but this is a quarterback-driven league, right? And you're looking for a guy in Kenny Pickett to take that next step, right? So for Kenny, like, he has all the pieces around him. He's got a good running back in Najee Harris, who he can also use in the pass game. He's got a decent enough O-line. Of course, Broderick Jones coming in, starting at left tackle. That's a heck of a lot of pressure, but he's a pretty darn good prospect to do that with. They brought in Isaac Seumalo from Philly. He comes across Pennsylvania and goes to Pittsburgh. They have Mason Cole at center. James Daniels is a pretty good guard. And then Okafor is their right tackle. Decent group, I would say average group at their offensive line.
But deep though, right? Because that's what Kevin Dotson, Nate Herbig, Green, Dan Moore.
Yeah,
like that's again, that's something we've seen. And I'm sorry to cut you off. That's something we see from a lot of these lines, right? Like if your line isn't great, at least to be deep, right? Like this.
Sure.
There's a lot of pieces that need to get better here. Especially we need to see what Broderick Jones can do, and Mason Cole needs to step up a little bit more. But the depth really balances out that lack of true star power.
Sure. And I think, you bring in a guy like Darnell Washington, right, from the University of Georgia, along with Pat Freiermuth, right? What a steal. Kind of both those guys, really good run blockers. Obviously, Freiermuth adds that receiving ability, but I also wouldn't discount Darnell Washington's receiving ability, right, as well, especially on pop passes and kind of leaking him out in the backfield. And you get a big guy like that out in space, man. It's pretty scary because he can run too.
Oh, he's got good speed.
He does.
Absolutely.
He does. So, you use that to help Pat Freiermuth, especially on early downs and play action, right? That's really important. And then you're bringing a guy like Allen Robinson via trade from the Rams, who, again, veteran presence in a young room. Deontay Johnson, I know, is a veteran at this point, but he's still on the younger side, right? George Pickens in his second year, Anthony Miller, who I really liked a good amount, especially his time over in Chicago, and then Miles Boykin, a Notre Dame guy who went to Baltimore, started his career in Baltimore. So they have some nice pieces. They have some nice depth pieces as well in that receiving room. They have depth at the tight end room, like we talked about. Another spot that I think that they could definitely use some more depth is the running back position, especially with Najee Harris being banged up early in his career. That's a concern for me.
Because who's behind him? McFarland? Is that really it? And McFarland's not like a great backup. Like this is a pretty weak backup for a team that likes to run the ball.
Right.
Like Pittsburgh, you would think you'd have at least an average backup behind Harris. Like this if he goes down, that could be very detrimental to this team because it seems like it's going to be a heavy play action team, right? With their run blocking tight ends, you want to go play. And I know the analyst is going to say you don't need to run to do play action, but I'm not sure how many linebackers are going to bite on Anthony McFarland. Like that's just like
No doubt.
yeah, you can take the delayed step on McFarland
Sure.
if he's running the ball. So they definitely need somebody. Um, wouldn't surprise me if they add a running back in August.
Yep, I agree. I was just gonna say, when guys shake loose, right? That the Pittsburgh Steelers and the running back market are going to be one of those teams that are kind of looking around, right? Even a guy like DeAndre Swift maybe would have been a nice pickup for them. Again, a number 2 guy. He could have been, I think they're in that kind of market, right? Not so much like a lower tier guy. You want a guy who's going to come in and be like a Matt Breida, right, for you. I know I use Giants analogies a lot, but we're just so hooked on that team and so close to seeing them.
Yeah.
A guy like that would really help them out, a veteran guy. So you got to see who kind of shakes loose and who may be out there when cuts come around. So I think for the offense, it's just about consistency. If they're able to run the ball, again, in a really, really tough division, really tough black and blue and a AFC North division, right? Terrell Austin's going to do his thing along with Mike Tomlin with the defense. And then Matt Canada has to really step up. I feel like every year his job is always in doubt
Yeah. There
with
was a
that,
lot of calls on him getting fired last
a
year,
lot.
and Mike Tomlin
So,
held strong with him and said he's not going to do it. So,
yep,
but yeah, but that loyalty has to be rewarded.
no doubt, no doubt. And so they have to take the next step, and that starts with, like I said, the quarterback Kenny Pickett in his second year.
I agree. All right, so the projection at 10.5. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think it's a good projection. I think it's right around where they're at. Again, we've talked about it. 1 or 2 games above, I mean, below or above. I really don't see it going above. I think that's perfect number for them. I would see them again at that 9-win mark. Again, I just think this division is super talented and very much like the Steelers with Mike Tomlin. Harbaugh over in Baltimore, very similar type of situation, right? So they're never going to be out of it either. You have the ascension of Joe Burrow and his weapons over in Cincinnati, right? And Cleveland's going to be a tough ground and pound football team. Obviously, I think they're the weakest link in this division, but no one is a surefire out when it comes to these in division games. But the AFC is a gauntlet, like we've talked about. So 9 wins, I could see them even maybe closer to 8 wins. I think maybe 8.5 is that better number in my opinion, believe it or not.
Okay, I can see that. I feel like 10 is probably good. I think 10 is really where it's at. I
Yep.
don't think 10. I think 10's a little high, right?
Yep.
'Cause I don't see a world where Pittsburgh gets 11. But 10 I feel is good. 9 I feel is good. So maybe 9.5. So maybe I put a win
Yep.
above you.
Yep.
But this team is a solid team, especially on defense, and that can get you through regular season games. It will not get you far in the playoffs.
Sure.
You're not getting that. You need a good offense to go far in the playoffs. We'll see what happens to Kenny Pickett. I did like Kenny Pickett at Pittsburgh
Yep.
in college.
So did I. Yep.
We'll see what he does in year 2. I liked what I saw in year 1. Yeah, and we'll see if this, if these question marks can come through, right? George Pickens' second year, Najee Harris has to do with the injury. Darnell Washington, is he healthy? And if he is healthy, is he going to be the player we all thought he could be?
Right.
And then offensive line, yeah, how does Broderick Jones hold up in year 1 in a very rough division? But I still think, right now, I still feel Pittsburgh is definitely very firmly in the playoff conversation for the wild card.
Sure. And I think, Pittsburgh does a great job of developing players, keeping guys in their system, right? And especially at the receiver position, they do a great job of developing wide receivers. They always have. So you have a younger guy like a Calvin Austin III or a Gunnar Olszewski who came over from New England, right? And you could look at some of those younger guys and say, okay, some of these guys may come along and develop. But again, 2 big question marks: Broderick Jones with experience, Kenny Pickett, I've touched on a few times, obviously. Those are make or break type players for this team. So that's why I say it could go on the lower end if things don't go well in those 2 areas, especially on the offense. But I agree. I mean, their defense is really darn good. You hope TJ Watt kind of gets back on the horse again. They have some nice depth, with DeMarvin Leal and Cam Hayward, obviously, Larry Ogunjobi, who you talked about. Even a guy like a Landon Roberts in the middle, like he's not that bad there, right? And then they have
No, he's not bad. I just wish
right.
he was a little better.
Absolutely. So I think that this defense actually is going to be like that under the radar, just really, really solid defense. But at the end of the day, that's Pittsburgh for you, and that's Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin.
It wouldn't surprise me at the end of the year you look back and you're like, oh, wow, Pittsburgh was fourth in defense.
Right.
You might not even think about it, right? 'Cause they're not going to be first. They definitely will not be first. But
No.
it wouldn't surprise me if at the end of the year they're like third and fourth in yards.